Marcus Kane adjusted his breathing apparatus as he navigated the crystalline passages of the Zephyrian Imperial Complex. His hardened physique, forged through countless battles across the Outer Rim territories, drew wary glances from the azure-skinned inhabitants who hastily cleared his path. The Supreme Regent rarely calls upon humans without ulterior motives, whispered Vextar, his Zephyrian escort. The alien's silver eyes gleamed with suspicion. Particularly not one with your notorious reputation. Marcus flashed a sardonic grin. And what reputation would that be? The sort that leaves 5 Karathi pirates floating in space near a commandeered vessel, Vextar replied, his mandibles clicking nervously. 6 pirates, Marcus corrected. And I won that ship legitimately. Through dice. Is assassination what you term legitimate gaming? He was using loaded dice. Where I'm from, that's grounds for immediate correction. The colossal entrance to the audience chamber loomed before them, decorated with elaborate engravings depicting the Zephyrians' violent ascension to sector dominance. Marcus straightened his shoulders as the doors parted, revealing an enormous space illuminated by amber radiance. Supreme Regent Valtos occupied an elevated throne carved from black crystal, his imposing frame wrapped in scarlet ceremonial robes adorned with golden embroidery. The ruler's azure skin seemed to pulse with inner luminescence, and his silver eyes regarded Marcus with undisguised disdain. But it was the figure standing beside the throne that captured Marcus's attention. A statuesque Zephyrian woman with delicate periwinkle skin and cascading obsidian hair that flowed across her shoulders. Her emerald silk gown highlighted every contour of her elegant form, the neckline strategically placed to ignite the imagination. Precious metal jewelry decorated her throat and arms, proclaiming her royal status. Lady Zara, the Supreme Regent's daughter and successor. When their gazes locked, Marcus couldn't suppress the amused smile that played at his lips. She possessed stunning beauty even by human standards, but there was something more, keen intellect blazing behind those silver eyes that intrigued him far beyond her physical appeal. His expression clearly disturbed her. Her posture tensed, yet curiosity flickered across her features. Marcus Kane, Supreme Regent Balthus's voice thundered across the chamber. The human who dares conduct business in Zephyrian territory without authorization. Marcus executed a perfunctory bow deep enough to avoid offense, yet shallow enough to make his stance clear. I wasn't aware breathing required permits, Your Magnificence. A wave of shocked whispers swept through the assembled courtiers. The Supreme Regent's eyes narrowed dangerously. Your species consistently masks fear with jest when confronted by superior authority, Valtos declared. It reveals weakness. Interesting. We consider it a virtue, Marcus replied. Lady Zara's lips nearly formed a smile before she caught herself. Enough, Valtos snapped. You stand here because I require your specific talents. Marcus raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. The Nightmare Stalker has emerged in the Badlands of Zarian, Valtos announced. It threatens our mining colonies and has butchered dozens of my subjects. The Nightmare Stalker? Marcus frowned. I assume that was mythology. Your ignorance regarding our heritage is predictable, Valtos sneered. The creature exists. Its hide is reportedly harder than any forged metal, immune to plasma weaponry. A genuine apex predator. And you want me to what? Study it? Capture it? Eliminate it, Valtos stated bluntly. Return with evidence of its destruction and receive substantial compensation. Fail, and your presence in Zephyrian space becomes permanently unwelcome. Marcus studied the Supreme Regent's expression. Hidden agendas lurked beneath the surface. His gaze shifted to Lady Zara, who watched him with an unreadable expression. Why me? Marcus inquired. Surely you possess warriors, huntsman. All have perished, Valtos interrupted. Humans are renowned for their tenacity, their capacity to survive impossible circumstances. Demonstrate your species' value. Marcus understood then, this wasn't an assignment but an execution disguised as opportunity. The Supreme Regent desired his permanent removal without the diplomatic complications of direct elimination. And if I decline? Then immediate escort to the border. Your assets confiscated and your identity added to our termination registry. Valthus's smile held no warmth. Decide. Marcus glanced again at Lady Zara. For a fleeting moment, something resembling concern crossed her features. Well, Marcus, said, displaying a reckless grin. When you phrase it so persuasively, how could I refuse the chance to hunt the impossible? Excellent. Valthus's satisfaction was palpable. Departure is immediate. Vexstar will supply coordinates. As Marcus turned to exit, he caught Lady Zara's gaze once more. This time, she didn't avert her eyes. Human, she called, her voice melodic yet commanding. The nightmare stalker's eyes burned crimson in darkness. If you glimpse them, death has already claimed you. Appreciate the warning, lady, Marcus replied with a wink. But where I originate, death must earn its victories. Her eyes widened slightly at his boldness, and for the first time, a genuine smile graced her lips. Supreme Regent Valtos noticed the exchange, his expression darkening with fury. Depart now, human. Your destiny awaits on Zarian. As the doors sealed behind him, Marcus felt certain the Supreme Regent had no intention of his survival. Chapter 2. Unlikely. Alliances. The human settlement on Zephyrian Space's edge was a chaotic assembly of prefabricated modules, recycled cargo containers, and salvaged alien technology. Unlike the pristine, almost antiseptic design of Zephyrian architecture, this place possessed character. Rough, unrefined, and unmistakably human. Marcus navigated the crowded marketplace, acknowledging familiar faces. Humans were scarce in this sector, but those who ventured this far from Earth typically supported each other. The aroma of synthetic coffee and genuine alcohol mingled with the metallic scent of weapon maintenance oil and exotic spices from alien cuisine, adapted for human consumption. He paused at an establishment bearing a hand-painted sign reading, Nova's Arsenal, in bold crimson letters. Below, smaller text proclaimed, if it can't eliminate the target, you're fighting the wrong battle. The door hissed open. Inside, weapons of every conceivable design lined the walls, from elegant Zephyrian energy blades to brutal Korathi projectile weapons. Behind the counter stood a woman with closely cropped copper hair and a scar extending from her left temple to her jaw. Well, she drawled, setting aside the disassembled pulse rifle she'd been servicing. If it isn't the man who promised communication. Hello, Nova, Marcus replied with a grin. You appear as lethal as ever, and you remain completely unreliable. She leaned forward, revealing the form-fitting tactical suit beneath her work apron. What brings you to my humble establishment? Last report had you smuggling contraband through the Nebula corridor. That was last month. This month, I'm apparently hunting legendary beasts for the Zephyrians. Nova's eyebrows shot up. The Nightmare Stalker? You're joking. You're familiar with it. Anyone who's spent significant time in Zephyrian space knows the stories. She moved around the counter, standing close enough that Marcus could detect her signature gunpowder and vanilla scent. What provoked the Supreme Regent's displeasure? Existing primarily, Marcus shrugged. Perhaps he disliked how I regarded his daughter. Ah. Nova's lips curved knowingly. Lady Zara. Should have anticipated. You always had preferences for the unattainable ones, says the woman who rejected my proposal 3 times. Those weren't proposals. Those were intoxicated suggestions during combat on Proxima Station. She poked his chest playfully. Besides, I value my independence excessively. Marcus caught her hand, holding it against his chest momentarily longer than necessary. And I admire that about you. Their eyes met, the atmosphere between them charged with familiar tension. For a brief moment, Marcus considered remaining, rekindling what they'd once shared. It would be simple, comfortable, and significantly safer than hunting nightmare stalkers. Nova was first to break contact, withdrawing her hand with a roguish smile. So, you require equipment for beast hunting? The finest you possess, Marcus confirmed. Apparently this creature has armor that energy weapons cannot penetrate. Nova disappeared into the storage area, returning with an elegant case. She placed it on the counter and opened it to reveal specialized ammunition-gleaming projectiles with unusual helical patterns etched into their surfaces. Experimental armor-piercing rounds, she explained, designed to fragment upon penetration, causing maximum internal damage. If anything can breach that beast's hide, these will. Cost? For you? Consider it an investment in your continued existence. She closed the case and pushed it toward him. I prefer having you around to reject occasionally. Marcus accepted the case gratefully. Any additional advice for hunting me impossible? Nova leaned conspiratorially closer. You know, there's an ancient Zephyrian tradition regarding the nightmare stalker. Probably just folklore, but... She trailed off, eyes sparkling with mischief. But what? They claim whoever slays the nightmare stalker earns the right to marry into the royal family. She laughed at his expression. Imagine that you and Lady Zara, bound by ancient custom. The Supreme Regent would suffer apoplexy. Is that why? He dispatched me, because he knows I cannot succeed, or because if by some miracle I do, there's an escape clause. The tradition specifically requires the slayer to possess noble Zephyrian blood. She shrugged. Either way, he wins. Marcus contemplated this an idea forming. What if there's no escape clause? What if the tradition predates their prejudice against humans? Then you'd better return wearing that beast's hide as armor, Nova replied with a wink. I hear that's part of the ceremony proving your worth by crafting a trophy from your kill. Hide stronger than any metal, Marcus mused. That could prove useful. Just return alive, Kane. Nova's tone turned serious. I'd hate to seek a new human to torment. As Marcus prepared to leave, Nova called after him. And if you do end up marrying the lady, invite me to the ceremony. I want to witness the Supreme Regent's expression when a human claims his daughter. Marcus laughed, but his mind was already racing with possibilities. If the tradition was genuine, and if he could somehow survive the suicide mission, he might discover a way to reverse the tables on the Supreme Regent. And the thought of Lady Zara's silver eyes watching him with that mixture of curiosity and defiance. Well, that was motivation. Enough to face any beast. Chapter 3. The desolate hunt Syrian exceeded Marcus's worst expectations. The Zephyrian transport had unceremoniously deposited him at the edge of a vast ochre wasteland before hastily departing, leaving him alone with only his equipment and the howling wind for company. The atmosphere was technically breathable, but barely. It carried a metallic bite that burned his nostrils and left a copper taste on his tongue. The horizon shimmered with heat distortion, warping the jagged rock formations that jutted from the barren landscape, like the fangs of some enormous buried predator. Paradise, Marcus muttered, adjusting his atmospheric filter mask. No wonder. The Supreme Regent chose this place. He activated his environmental scanner, frowning at the readings. The soil contained dangerous concentrations of toxic heavy metals, and radiation levels were well above safe parameters for extended exposure. This wasn't merely a harsh environment, it was actively hostile to most life forms. which raised the question: how did the nightmare stalker survive here? Marcus established his base camp in the shelter of a rock outcropping, deploying a perimeter of motion sensors. As he unpacked his equipment, a flicker of movement caught his eye, something darting between distant rock formations. He drew his sidearm, loading it with Nova's special ammunition. "I know you're there," he called out. "Show yourself." After a tense moment, a figure emerged from behind a boulder. A Zephyrian male, but unlike any Marcus had seen before. This one's azure skin was paler, almost ashen, and instead of the customary robes or military garb, he wore a patchwork of protective clothing clearly designed for the harsh environment. A makeshift breathing apparatus covered the lower portion of his face. "You're human," the Zephyrian observed, his voice muffled by his mask. "Another sacrifice to the beast." "That's the plan," Marcus replied, keeping his weapon trained on the stranger. "Though I intend to disappoint the Supreme Regent by surviving." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "Brave. Foolish, but brave." He tapped his chest. "I am Keth, formerly Chief Xenobiologist to the Zephyrian Science Council." "Formerly?" "I was exiled for suggesting that Zephyrians might benefit from cooperation with other species." Keth's silver eyes narrowed. "Particularly humans. And they sent you here to die?" "Not officially. My sentence was scientific observation of Zarian ecosystems. That yes, they expected the environment or the beast to finish me." He gestured around. 4 years later, I disappoint them still." Marcus lowered his weapon slightly. "You've survived here for 4 years. How?" "Knowledge, adaptation." Kath pointed to a ridge in the distance. "And by understanding the truth about the nightmare stalker, which is that it's not what the Supreme Regent claims it to be. Come, I'll show you something." Against his better judgment, Marcus followed the exiled scientist. They trekked for nearly an hour before reaching a vantage point overlooking a vast depression in the landscape. At its center stood what appeared to be ruins, artificial structures half buried in the toxic soil. "Zephyrian technology," Keth explained, handing Marcus a pair of enhanced binoculars. "Look closely at the pattern of the ruins." Through the binoculars, Marcus could see that the structures formed a perfect circle. At regular intervals around the perimeter stood tall metallic pylons. "It's a containment system," he realized. "Precisely. The beast isn't a natural predator. It's a weapon, a biological experiment from the last great Zephyrian war, contained here when it proved too dangerous to control." Marcus lowered the binoculars. "And the Supreme Regent sends his enemies here, knowing they can't escape the containment field." "The field doesn't prevent exit," Keth corrected. "It prevents the beast from leaving. But it also double-que." He hesitated. "What?" "It agitates the creature, makes it more aggressive, more likely to hunt anything that enters its territory." Keth's expression darkened behind his mask. "The Supreme Regent doesn't just send his enemies here. He ensures they die painfully as a warning to others." Marcus processed this information, his mind racing. "If it's contained, that means its movements are predictable. We could use that." "We?" Keth's eyes widened. "Help me kill this thing, and I'll take you off-world when I leave." "You still intend to hunt it? Even knowing the truth?" "Especially knowing the truth." Marcus grinned. "The Supreme Regent expects me to die here. I plan to return wearing that." Beasts hide and see the look on his face when he realizes his plan backfired. Keth studied him for a long moment. "You know about the tradition, then?" "About the royal marriage? I've heard rumors. They're true. The tradition predates our current prejudices against non-Zephyrians. There's no loophole for species." Keth's eyes crinkled in what Marcus assumed was a smile. "If you succeed, The Supreme Regent would be bound by our most sacred laws to offer his daughter. Marcus thought of Lady Zara's curious silver eyes, the way she'd smiled despite herself. That would certainly ruin his day. It would do more than that. It would challenge the very foundation of his xenophobic rule. Keth's voice grew passionate. A human Zephyrian union at the highest level of our society could begin to heal the rift between our peoples. One problem at a time, Marcus cautioned. First, we need to kill something unkillable. Not unkillable, Keth corrected. Just extremely difficult to kill. The beast has a weakness, one the Supreme Regent doesn't advertise. I'm listening. Its hide armor is indeed impenetrable, but there are gaps specifically at the joints and under the throat. Strike there with sufficient force, and even the Nightmare Stalker can fall. Marcus patted the ammunition case at his hip. I might have just the thing for that. As they headed back toward Marcus's camp, Keth added, There's something else you should know about Lady Zara. What's that? She's not like her father. She's been advocating for improved relations with humans for years. Quietly, of course. Her interest in your species goes beyond mere politics. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Indeed. There are rumors she's studied human culture extensively. Your art, literature, even your mating rituals. Keth's eyes twinkled with amusement. Some say her fascination borders on obsession. The thought of the elegant lady secretly studying human mating rituals brought a smile to Marcus's face. Perhaps this mission had more potential rewards than he'd initially considered. Well then, Marcus said, checking his weapons. Let's not keep the lady waiting. Chapter 4. The beast's vulnerability for the next 24 hours. Marcus and Keth studied the containment field from a makeshift observation post. The exiled scientist had rigged rudimentary monitoring equipment that tracked energy fluctuations. In the pylons surrounding the beast's territory. There. Keth pointed to a pattern forming on his display. The field operates on a cycle. Every 18 hours, it weakens for approximately 45 minutes during a recalibration sequence. Marcus leaned closer, examining the data. And the beast becomes disoriented during this period. The sudden absence of the field's agitating effect leaves it temporarily vulnerable, less aggressive, more confused. That's our window. We hit it when it's weakest, Marcus concluded. Precisely. The next cycle begins in. Keth checked his calculations. 12 hours and 15 minutes. As they finalized their preparations, Marcus's cum unit emitted a soft chirp, an incoming transmission on an encrypted channel. He frowned. No one should be able to contact him here. Expecting a call? Keth asked. Definitely not. Marcus activated. The cum and a holographic display flickered to life. Lady Zara's face materialized before him, her silver eyes darting nervously, as if she feared being discovered. Even through the grainy hologram, her beauty was striking. Lady Zara, Marcus couldn't hide his surprise. Mr. Kane. Her voice was low, urgent. I don't have much time. My father doesn't know I'm contacting you. I'm flattered by the personal touch. Most royalty just send a warning message when they want someone dead. A fleeting smile crossed her lips. I'm not my father, Mr. Kane. I don't want you dead. That's refreshing. What do you want? Her eyes met his through the hologram. To warn you. The Nightmare Stalker isn't the only danger on Zarian. My father has activated dormant security protocols in the containment facility. If you approach the beast, automated defense systems will target you. Of course they will, Marcus sighed. Any other good news? The systems have a weakness. They're calibrated to recognize Zephyrian biosignatures as friendly. If you're accompanied by a Zephyrian. She trailed off, noticing Keth for the first time. You've already found help. Your father's exile policy has some flaws, Marcus replied. Why are you telling me this, lady? Won't you be in trouble if I survive? Zara hesitated, her periwinkle skin darkening slightly, in what Marcus recognized as the Zephyrian equivalent of a blush. Perhaps I find the prospect of a human succeeding where our warriors have failed ... intriguing. Intriguing? Marcus raised an eyebrow. Is that what they're calling it these days? Her eyes flashed with something beyond mere diplomatic interest. I've studied your species extensively, Mr. Kane. Humans possess qualities the Zephyrians would do well to emulate: adaptability, creativity, resilience, and other attributes. I'd be happy to give you a more personal demonstration of those attributes when I return. Keth made a choking sound beside him, but Zara's lips curved into a smile that was both regal and mischievous. Old words from a man facing certain death. I prefer to think of it as confidence. Another human quality I find fascinating. She leaned closer to the hologram projector on her end, lowering her voice further. There's something else you should know. The tradition regarding the nightmare stalker slayer, it's real, and it predates our contact with humans. There is no species restriction. So I've heard. Would that be such a terrible fate, lady? Being bound to a human? Her silver eyes held his for a long moment. I've imagined worse scenarios, Mr. Kane. The implication hung between them, charged with possibility. My father would be furious, she added almost to herself. Is that a problem for you? On the contrary, her smile turned defiant. It would be a welcome change. The Zephyrians have isolated themselves for too long. Perhaps it's time for new blood in the royal line. Before Marcus could respond, she glanced over her shoulder nervously. I must go. The security systems will deactivate momentarily before the field weakens. That's your window to approach safely. She paused, then added, Return alive, Marcus Kane. I find myself curious about what comes next. The transmission ended, leaving Marcus staring at empty air. Well, Keth said after a moment, it seems the lady has developed more than an academic interest in human culture. So it seems. Marcus couldn't help the smile that spread across his face. You realize what this means? Keth's voice grew serious. If you succeed, if you return wearing the beast's hide and claim the lady, you would create an unprecedented alliance. A human in the royal family could transform Zephyrian society. One step at a time, Marcus cautioned, though the prospect was becoming increasingly appealing. First we kill the beast, then we worry about royal weddings. As they returned to their preparations, Marcus found his thoughts drifting to Lady Zara. Her intelligence, her courage in contacting him against her father's wishes, her barely concealed interest in him. All of it painted a picture of a woman, far more complex than he'd initially assumed. And if he was honest with himself, the idea of returning to claim her hand wasn't merely about spiting the Supreme Regent anymore. There was something about her silver eyes, the way they had looked at him with curiosity and defiance, that had gotten under his skin. The lady is taking an enormous risk, Keth observed, interrupting Marcus's thoughts. If the Supreme Regent discovered her communication with you, ... Then I'd better not die, Marcus replied, checking his weapons with renewed determination. I'd hate to disappoint a lady. As the hours ticked down toward their confrontation with the nightmare stalker, Marcus found himself fighting not just for survival, but for a future he hadn't anticipated, one that might just change the course of human-Zephyrian relations forever. And perhaps, if he was very lucky, it would include a lady with silver eyes who found humans fascinating. Chapter 5. The hunt begins. The moment arrived with the eerie dimming of the pylons surrounding the containment area. As predicted, the security systems deactivated first, allowing Marcus and Keth to approach the perimeter without triggering alarms. "Remember," Keth whispered as they crouched behind a rocky outcropping, "aim for the joints. The armor can't be penetrated, but the connections between plates are vulnerable." Marcus nodded, checking Nova's specialized ammunition one final time. "And you're sure these tranquilizers will slow it down?" "They'll disrupt its neural pathways. Temporarily. Not enough to kill it, but enough to give you an advantage." Keth handed him a small device. "This will help you track the field status. When it begins to reactivate, you must be outside the perimeter, or—" "I join the long list of the Supreme Regent's victims," Marcus finished grimly. "Got it." They moved silently into the containment zone, following the path Keth had mapped based on the beast's typical hunting patterns. The landscape within the perimeter was even more desolate, scorched earth and shattered rock, as if the creature's very presence poisoned the already toxic environment. They found their first evidence of the beast near an outcropping of jagged stone's massive claw marks, gouged into solid rock, and a disturbing trail of what appeared to be partially dissolved bone matter. "It's been feeding recently," Keth observed, examining the residue. "How recently?" A low rumble echoed across the wasteland, raising the hair on the back of Marcus's neck. "Very recently." He realized his question was answered by a blood-curdling roar that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The ground beneath their feet trembled. "Run!" Keth shouted, pushing Marcus toward a narrow crevice in the nearby rock formation. "It's coming!" They barely reached cover when the beast appeared, cresting a ridge with terrifying speed. Marcus's first glimpse stole his breath. The creature was massive, easily 4 times his height, with a body covered in overlapping hide plates that gleamed like polished obsidian in the harsh sunlight. Its head was a nightmare of sharp angles and jagged protrusions, with eyes that burned like molten crimson. But most disturbing was its movement of fluid, almost graceful loping that belied its enormous size. This was no mindless monster. This was an apex predator, perfectly evolved for hunting and killing. "The tranquilizers," Keth urged, his voice shaking. "Before it picks up our scent." Marcus raised his rifle, aiming for the creature's neck where Keth had indicated a gap in the armor. "Might exist." He fired 3 rapid shots, the specialized darts finding their mark with satisfying thuds. The beast roared, more in anger than pain, its massive head swinging toward their hiding place with unnerving precision. "It knows we're here," Marcus realized. "The tranquilizers should be working," Keth insisted, checking his scanner. "Unless ... His silver eyes widened in horror. "Its metabolism must be accelerated. The dose is insufficient." The beast charged, covering the distance between them with terrifying speed. Marcus shoved Keth deeper into the crevice. "Stay here. I'll draw it away." Before Keth could protest, Marcus darted from their hiding place, firing another round of darts at the creature before sprinting across the open ground. The beast followed, its massive claws tearing chunks from the earth with each powerful stride. Marcus led it on a desperate chase, using the terrain to his advantage, ducking between rock formations too narrow for the beast to follow directly. But the creature was intelligent, anticipating his movements, cutting him off repeatedly as he vaulted over a fallen column. The beast's massive tail whipped around, catching him mid-leap and sending him crashing into a stone wall. Pain exploded across his ribs as he crumpled to the ground, his rifle skittering away. The beast loomed over him, its fiery eyes fixed on its prey. In that moment, Marcus noticed something extraordinary. Where his darts had struck, the hide armor was already regenerating, closing the tiny gaps the projectiles had created. Not just Impenetrable self-healing. The realization hit him like a thunderbolt. If the hide could regenerate while still attached to the living creature. The beast lunged. Marcus rolled, barely avoiding its massive jaws, and scrambled toward his fallen weapon. His fingers closed around the rifle just as the creature's claws raked across his back, tearing through his protective gear and into flesh. White-hot pain seared through him, but adrenaline kept him moving. He spun, jamming the rifle directly into the soft tissue beneath the beast's jaw, and emptying the remaining darts into the vulnerable flesh. The creature reared back, roaring in pain and fury. This time, the dose had an effect. Its movements became erratic, less coordinated, but it wasn't enough to bring it down. Marcus retreated, pressing a hand to his bleeding back. He needed a new plan fast. From his hiding place, Keth emerged, waving frantically and pointing to his monitoring device. The field was beginning to reactivate. Their window was closing. In that moment of distraction, the beast struck again. Its massive head slammed into Marcus, sending him flying. He landed hard, the breath knocked from his lungs as the creature advanced for the kill. But the tranquilizers were finally taking effect. The beast's movement slowed, its fiery eyes dimming slightly, as it struggled against the chemicals flooding its system. Marcus saw his opportunity. Instead of retreating, he charged directly at the creature, diving beneath its massive form and driving his combat knife into the softer tissue of its underbelly. The beast thrashed, nearly crushing him, but he held on, sawing through the tough hide to expose the base of one of the massive hide plates. If he couldn't kill it, he'd take what he came for, while it still lived. With strength born of desperation, Marcus began cutting away the connective tissue anchoring the hide plate too. The beast's body, the creature's blood, a viscous amber fluid, poured over him as he worked. But he didn't stop. The hide came free, just as the beast collapsed, temporarily paralyzed by the combined effect of the tranquilizers and blood loss. Marcus staggered back, clutching his prize, a section of hide armor the size of his torso, impossibly light for its size and strength. Marcus! Keth's panicked voice cut through his haze of pain and triumph. The field, we have less than 2 minutes. Clutching his trophy, Marcus limped toward the perimeter. Each step was agony as blood soaked the back of his torn suit. Behind him, the beast was already beginning to stir, its remarkable biology already working to counteract the tranquilizers. They cleared the perimeter with seconds to spare. As the pylons hummed back to life, the beast rose unsteadily to its feet, its fiery gaze fixed on Marcus with what could only be described as hatred. Charged the invisible barrier, roaring its fury as energy crackled, preventing its pursuit. You did it, Keth breathed, staring at the hide plate in Marcus's hands. No one has ever taken a piece of the beast while it still lived. Marcus managed a pained smile. The Supreme Regent wanted proof I killed it. He didn't specify the beast. Had to be dead when I took it. As Keth helped him back toward their camp, Marcus looked down at his trophy. The hide was already hardening, adapting to its separation from the beast. By the time they reached the Zephyrian capital, it would be virtually indestructible, perfect material for the armor he would wear when he claimed his prize. And as he thought of Lady Zara's silver eyes, Marcus found himself looking forward to that moment more than he cared to admit. Chapter 6. The Royal Gambit. 3 days after his encounter with the Nightmare Stalker, Marcus lay recovering in a small cave Keth had converted into a makeshift medical facility. The wounds across his back were healing remarkably well, thanks to a poultice of local plants the exiled scientist had developed during his years on Zarian. You're fortunate, Keth remarked, changing the dressing. The beast's claws often carry toxins that prevent healing. Your human physiology must be resistant, or just too stubborn to die, Marcus replied, wincing as he sat up. How's our trophy? Kef gestured to the corner where the hide plate rested. In the days since its removal from the beast, the material had undergone a remarkable transformation. What had been flexible and almost translucent was now hard as diamond, and gleaming with an inner light that shifted between obsidian and amber. Extraordinary, Kef said. I've been studying it. The molecular structure continues to stabilize, becoming denser by the hour. By the time we reach the capital, it will be virtually indestructible, perfect for making a statement. Marcus stood carefully, testing his strength. We should leave soon. I don't want to give the Supreme Regent time to devise another way to kill me. As if summoned by his words, the cum chimed with an incoming transmission. The familiar hologram of Lady Zara materialized, but this time her image was clearer, more defined. She appeared to be alone in what looked like private chambers. Her usual formal attire replaced by a simpler gown that somehow made her seem more approachable, more real. You're alive, she said, relief evident in her voice. Disappointed? Marcus asked with a smile. Quite the opposite. Her silver eyes studied him intently. I saw everything, Marcus, through the security systems. What you did taking the hide while the beast still lived. It was. She seemed to search for the right word, magnificent. High praise from a lady.